अनेक जन्म संप्राप्त कर्मेन्धन विदाहिने आत्मज्ञानाग्निदानेन तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। अगजानन पद्मार्कं गजाननमहर्निशम् अनेकदन्त भक्तानाम् एकदन्तमुपास्महे। नमस्ते शारदा देवी काश्मीरपुरवासिनी त्वामहं प्रार्थये नित्यं विद्यादानं च देहि मे। दर्शनात् अभ्रसादसि जननात् कमलालये काश्यन्तु मरणान् मुक्तिः स्मरणात् अरुणाचले श्रीहरे नमः। नमस्सभाभ्यः सभापति। Bhagavan has bestowed his anugraham by bringing us together in this Kamalaalayam Sabha. Ambika auntie, Anant uncle and Krishna have been very kind to have me over once again. Again, it was a great honor to hear Snigdha Desiraju ji give the Upadghata Kriti, that is Arunachalanatham Smarami. The last line that she sings in the Charanam is Swaprakasha Jita Somagni Patangam. That is, he whose effulgence or radiance surpasses the sun, moon and Agni. And she describes that as she sings it very beautifully. It is also a matter of great joy for me personally. It's my parents, Srimati Geeta Muralidhar and Sri Aleman Muralidhar, my beloved grandmother, Srimati Lakshmi Pichumani, my wonderful aunt, Srimati Rani Ramaswamy, my wonderful wife, Srimati Aditi Rao, my parents-in-law, Srimati Premlata Rao and Sri Sudhir Rao, have all made it here today, as have other family members, friends, elders and devotees who have all come together in this Sabha today. Bhagavan has also brought us together on a Shani Pradosham. It is indeed his Paripurnam Ashirvadam and Anugraham that brings us all together today. This Kamalaalayam Sabha that we have the good fortune of being together in, a name and city very closely associated with Bhagavan. And through his Anugraham, this becomes the place for us to understand a little bit more about his Leela and the Upakaram of the holy men associated with the Tiruvannamalai Kshetram. Across the length and breadth of Bharatavarsha, there are various Punyasthalams, Kshetrams, where either due to one deity there are various others which are known. There are those where many deities and many forms of Parabrahma Swarupam come together. And there are also certain Kshetras where when we usually take a name, a suffix tends to follow usually. Tiruvannamalai is one of those places which does not need a suffix. It is one of those few places where if you take the name, you know exactly who's being referred to. If we say Kashi, we would immediately suffix it with say Vishwanatha, Vishalakshi. We say Chidambaram, we would say Nataraja. We say Tiruvarur, we would say Tyagesha. But if we say Tiruvannamalai, I think it's understood who is being referred to and how it's being said as well. And perhaps that's the Anugraham of Bhagavan, that he brings us all together on a Shani Pradosham, and we have the good fortune of knowing a little bit more about his Leela, knowing a little bit more about the Upakaram of the holy men associated with this Kshetram. And every Kshetram, Kshetra Puranam, Itihasam or narration in Sanatana Dharma always brings with it a few ground rules. The first is the root of the narration, which for each of us, as we belong to Sanatana Dharma, is Veda Moola Pramanam. That is, everything has its roots and origins from the Vedas itself. The second is the premise of Nahi Ninda Nyayam. That is, it is used to mention that whenever one specific form of Bhagavan is worshipped, no other form of Bhagavan or Parabrahman gets denigrated or insulted in any manner. By recounting a story where the Mahatmyam of Shiva is praised, Mahavishnu and Devi do not get denigrated. And in the same manner, if one of Mahavishnu's Leelas or Devi's Leelas are recounted, no other deity gets denigrated in that manner. The third are the Puranas and the Upapuranas. Each of these have been narrated by Vedavyasa himself. Vedavyasa is said to be Bhagavan, and we know this because of the shlokam which says, Achatura Vadano Brahma, Dvibahur Aparo Harihi, Afala Lochana Shambhuhu, Bhagavan, Badarayanaha. That is, Vedavyasa himself is a Rupam of Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. And those of us who say the Vishnu Sahasranama would also know that Vyasaya Vishnu Rupaya, Vyasa Rupaya Vishnuve. And in the context of the Puranas and Upapuranas, there is another shloka which is specifically reserved for Vedavyasa which says, Ashtadasha Purananam Karta Satyavati Sutaha. That is, of the 18 Puranas or the primary Puranas which are associated with the Vedas, all of them have been composed by Vedavyasa himself. And it is through his Puranas that today we know the Sthala Puranam of Tiruvannamalai and also the Mahime associated with it. And the philosophical foundation of today's presentation is based in Shaivam, a school of thought which posits Shiva as the as the Parabrahma Swarupam, which is the most superior of them all. But this again does not mean that any of the others get denigrated in any ways. Nahi ninda nyayam. The last concept which I would like to mention is Agni. We all know Agni, one of the Panchamahabhutas. Tiruvannamalai is also known by the name Agni Kshetram. And Agni is the first deity who is prayed to in the Vedas, in the start of the Rig Vedas itself. The opening shloka of the Rig Veda itself says, Agnimile Purohitam Yajnasya Devaritvijam Otaram Ratnadhatamam. That is, come Agni, be the Purohita of this yajna that we are going to perform. Agni is also said to be the mouth of the gods. So any offering that we do to any Bhagavan in any Swarupam or form, it is offered to Agni in the form of a yajna or an homa. And hence the pramanam which comes, Agni Mukhavai Devaha. That is, Agni is the mouth of the gods. These 5 which I have mentioned today are what a considerable part of my talk is based on. And with the blessings and permissions of the elders in the Sabha, I would now like to begin my narration. So, our story begins in Naimisharanya, where Suta, who was one of the Shishyas of Vedavyasa, the master narrator across all of our Puranas, narrates a conversation between Sanaka Maharishi and Brahma. And the actual conversation is taking place in Brahmaloka. And this is something which Suta has come to know, and then he is sharing it with sages in Naimisharanya. Naimisharanya, like many other places, is where many of our Puranas are narrated. Naimisharanya is one, Kailasha is another, Vaikuntha is another, for example, so on and so forth. So in the conversation between Sanaka Maharishi and Brahma, Brahma recollects an incident which took place between him and Vishnu. So this is at a time when creation has concluded. So Brahma has created the worlds and the animate and inanimate objects in it. And Brahma and Vishnu are having a debate on who is greater. So as their conversation and exchange continues, there is a sudden pillar of fire which shows up as they are conversing. And this pillar of fire is blazing and it has neither beginning nor end. No adi, no antam. So Brahma and Vishnu are unable to comprehend what exactly this great Jyoti is. So Brahma and Vishnu decided, okay, let us find out what is this source of this Tejas Agni or the summit. So Vishnu takes the form of a boar and Brahma takes the form of a swan. So Vishnu decides to dig into the bowels of the earth to find out where the source of this Agni is. And Brahma takes the form of a swan to go all the way into the heavens to find the summit. And they start off. So crores and crores of years have gone. They're still going in their respective directions. Vishnu is digging further and further beyond this Bhuloka into the cosmos. Brahma is flying higher and higher. Both of them are getting tired. Both of them are losing their abilities to go further. Suddenly, Brahma, as he is flying up in the form of a swan, there is a flower which is falling in the opposite direction. Then Brahma asks him, who are you? And Brahma says, no, I am a Ketaki flower and I have been falling from the shiras of this fire. I don't know where I've come from. The Ketaki flower says, I don't know where I've come from, but I've been falling for a very long time. How long have you been falling, Brahma? And he says, it must be some 100,000 crores of years I've been falling. And Brahma says, let us have a bargain. You act as my guarantor that I have seen the summit, and then I have to go and convey this to somebody who I'm competing with. And the Ketaki flower says, okay, I will also get some reward at the end of this. So Brahma and the Ketaki flower come back to this place in Bhuloka where this Tejas Agni has come, and then they see Vishnu and they ask Vishnu, you found the source? He says, no, I stopped, I couldn't go any further. And then Brahma says, no, see, I have gone to the summit, this is a Sakshi. And then immediately as Brahma says this, Parameshwara emerges from the middle of this fire. As Brahma has just completed his statement, Parameshwara shows up. And he emerges right from this lingam of fire. Until this time, neither Brahma nor Vishnu knows that there is somebody called Parameshwara. This is the first time that they realize that, oh, there is somebody who is greater than the both of us. And they immediately fall at his feet and they start chanting the Vedas in the Shatarudriyam. And this is captured by a pramanam which comes in the Vedas, which is also said in the Mahanyasam. Hiranya Garbha Samavartatagre Bhutasya Jata Patirekasi, which means that there is somebody who is seeing Brahma coming and going multiple times. And somebody who is seeing Vishnu coming and going multiple times. And that person is Parameshwara. And Immediately, Bhagavan, when they realize that this is Parameshwara, they immediately fall at his feet and they seek forgiveness for their aparadhas. And Bhagavan is Ashutoshi, so he immediately forgives them. And then Bhagavan asks them, okay, I've shown myself to you, what do you want? So Brahma and Vishnu have only one wish immediately. They tell Bhagavan, manifest here. So Bhagavan, Avyaja Karunamurti, the infinite ocean of mercy, decides that he will manifest wherever this takes place. So Bhagavan then decides that he is going to reside in that place. But there is something else which takes place. Brahma and Vishnu know that this is Parameshwara, who is greater than them. The rest of the world does not know. Devas do not know who Parameshwara is. Asuras do not know who Parameshwara is. All of the other living classification of beings, Yaksha, Kinnara, Kimpurushadi, Vidyacharanadi, nobody knows who Parameshwara is. So then all of these devas come together at this place where Bhagavan decides to reside. And they tell Vishnu that, we also want to know who is this Parameshwara. So nobody knows. So they ask him, who is this Parameshwara? So then Mahavishnu says, you say these verses in the Vedas, he will then come in. And they say those verses. He doesn't show up. And then Mahavishnu realizes that, they do not have a guru. So they have to be taught. So this now moves from the Skanda Puranam to the Vamana Puranam, where Mahavishnu tells them, look into my heart. Look into my Hridayam. And then when they peer very closely, and then they realize Shiva manifests there. And then when Mahavishnu prays, Parameshwara reveals himself. And there's a very beautiful few activities which take place here. Parameshwara reveals himself to the entire congregation of Devas, Asuras and all other living beings. So he takes Mahavishnu aside. Parameshwara initiates Mahavishnu into the Panchakshara mantra. Parameshwara initiates Mahavishnu to the Panchakshara mantra, applies Vibhuti on his forehead, brings him close, and then teaches him Shantam Padmasanastham Shashidhara Mukutam Panchavaktam Trinetram, and then he teaches him the Panchakshara mantra. And then Mahavishnu, then knowing that this is a Panchakshara mantra and this is Bhagavan, and then he is asked again, what do you all want? And then everybody again pleads and tells him, stay here forever, don't move. And that is when the world's first Shivalingam, Tiruvannamalai, comes into existence. And Tiruvannamalai is a place, Bhagavan himself narrates it and says this in the Skanda Puranam Arunachala Mahatmyam, that this is a place which will never be affected by Srishti, Sthiti, Pralayam. That will come and go. This place is not going to go anywhere. So, Bhagavan has now come. Bhagavan has taken residence in Tiruvannamalai, we can say. So now the question comes is, what happens to Bhagavan? Who prays to him? How do they pray to him? Is there any form, method, worship? And then the Skanda Puranam gives this answer. Everybody prays to him. So these are the devas who want the darshan, and then it doesn't happen. And as I said, the Panchakshara initiation takes place by Parameshwara to Mahavishnu, and then everybody knows the Mahatmyam of the Panchakshara mantram, they know the Mahatmyam of Vibhuti, they know the Mahatmyam of Rudraksham. And then after this, this is where Mahavishnu is initiated into Linga Puja. So then he realizes, okay, there is Shiva. Shiva, Parameshwara, has a form. That form is called a Lingam or a Shivalingam, and then Mahavishnu begins that puja. In the same way, just like Mahavishnu, everybody else also does the same thing. So each and every divine being or each and every being in this earth, outside of this earth, each of them create a Lingam of their own, dedicated to Shiva, and they start worshipping Bhagavan over here. So a few examples which are captured in the Skanda Puranam are, Brahma has a Shivlingam known by the name Hatakeshwara. That is a lingam made of gold. And the name of his Shivlingam is called Jagat Pradhaneshwara. Krishnalinga, and it is known by the name Arijiteshwara. Indra, Purandara, Devendra also has one which is made of Vajra or adamantine, which is known by the name Vishwatmaneshwara. In the same way, the Gandharvas have a Shivlingam made of wood or timber, and it is known by the name Sarvasreshtanatha. And then even Garuda, the Vahana of Mahavishnu, even he has a Shivlingam of his own, which is made out of cooked rice, and it has the name Haryakshanatha. Yamadharmaraja has a Shivlingam of his own. The Rakshasas have a Shivlingam of their own. Insects, fishes, birds, all living beings have a Shivlingam of their own, and they all pray to Shivlinga. That is how, as per the Skanda Puranam, each and every deity attains the sthanam that it gets. So the Devas today are where they are in Devaloka, it is because they have done the Shivalinga Puja, and they have done it continuously for eons and eons of years. The same way, the Asuras have their sthanam, the birds have their sthanam, living and non-living beings have their sthanam, so on and so forth. So Bhagavan now has chosen to manifest in Tiruvannamalai as an absolute expression of his love and his compassion to all of his devotees. And then of course he is in Kailasham as well. We all know that that is his chief residence. So when he is in Kailasham, and this is where Ambal also now begins to come and emerge and take her own rightful place in Tiruvannamalai. So Ambal, when she is playing with Shiva, in a course of play, she closes his eyes from behind, like this. So immediately the entire worlds across the cosmos, they all go dark. And when Ambal realizes, she immediately pulls her hand off. And then the rishis and the munis, they go rushing to Kailasha and they say, Parameshwara, great darkness has come upon this world, but it has now been lifted. And then Ambal asks, how long did this darkness take place? And then the sages say, more than 500 crore years. So then Ambal realizes that this is not something which she should have done. And then she asked, what should I do now? So Gautama Maharishi, who is one of the foremost Maharishis who is associated with Tiruvannamalai, he tells Ambal that go to South India. For anything and everything, if any devata or any holy being has to perform any kind of Papa Vimochana, they will all come to South India. Gautama Maharishi says you have to go to South India to offer Prayaschittam. So then she asks Parameshwara, what should I do? Where should I go? So Parameshwara himself says, there is a place called as Kachapa Kshetra. So go to that Kachapa Kshetra, you will find a mango tree. A mango tree which gives only one mango. Go there, meditate there, your time will come to return. So this Kachapa Kshetra is the older name for Kanchipuram. And this is Kanchipuram before Kamakshi Amma has come here. And this is Kanchipuram before even Ekambara has come here. So Ambal goes there to Kachapa Kshetra, and in that Kachapa Kshetra she finds a place for herself close to the Palar river. So the Palar river is the river which is there to the south of Kanchipuram. So in this Palar river, close to this Palar river, Ambal finds that singular mango tree and she creates a Shivalinga made of sand over there. And she continues to be there. And during this time, she welcomes various devotees, sages, rishis, munis, so on and so forth, while she routinely performs and offers puja to the Shivalinga. So as she continues to do so, the Palar river suddenly floods over. And the destruction is washing away everything in its road. So Ambal, when she gets news of this flood, her immediate instinct is to not run away. Her immediate instinct is to run towards the Shivalinga and protect it and save it from this. So, as the flood is getting closer and closer, Ambal immediately, as an act of instinct, embraces the Shivalinga. You can see this over here. So, Ambal embraces the Shivalinga in the hopes that it won't get washed away. But immediately, as the water is supposed to hit her, the water disappears. This is again a Leela. And then Ambal realizes that yes, this is all a Leela. And the intent of this Leela was for Parameshwara to test Ambal's devotion here. And then Ambal also realizes, Ambal is obviously Shiva Bhinna. What is it that Shiva knows that Ambal doesn't know? So Ambal realizes that this was a Leela, and then she says, I will now remain here as Kamakshi. And she will say, my eyes will bestow every single desire and wish that my bhaktas have. And I will stay here and teach the 32 facets of Dharma to whoever comes here. And this is where, when Ambal says this, Durvasa Maharishi comes here. And Durvasa Maharishi does not come without purpose. He is known to be Krodha Bhattaraka. He is a very angry teacher. And when Durvasa Maharishi sees this darshan of Kamakshi Ambal, he immediately composes something called as the Arya Dvishati or the Lalita Stavaratnam. This Lalita Stavaratnam becomes the puja vidhi for Kanchi Kamakshi Amma and Kanchipuram. And it is much later that Adi Shankaracharya comes and he establishes the Bhuprastha Shri Chakram, that is a Shri Chakram which is right next to Ambal on the ground. And the Puja Grantha, which is established by Durvasa, continues to be in effect even today. And that is why one of Ambal's protective forms is where she holds the Shankha Chakra. And in certain towns across Tamil Nadu, there is no Vishnu temple, because in every town in the olden days, there used to be a saying that if there is a Shiva temple, there has to be a Vishnu temple. But in certain temples, she herself is there holding the Shankha Chakra, standing like Balaji. And she gets the name Dharma Samvardhini as a result of this. That is, she who protects Dharma and teaches this Dharma to the rest of the world. So, Ambal came from Kailasham, went to Kanchipuram. So, she finally goes towards Tiruvannamalai. Now, on the way to Tiruvannamalai before she leaves, she is made aware by Gautama Maharishi about Mahishasura. So there is a long linkage of these itihasas. At first, Ambal is in Kailasha, she goes to Kanchipuram, and then from Kanchipuram she is about to leave, and then Gautama Maharishi tells her that there is someone called Mahishasura. He has attained this boon, which everybody knows, that he will only be killed by a feminine energy. So, to protect the world from Mahishasura, Ambal takes the Ashtadasha Bhuja Rupam of hers. And after a very intense battle, she finally slays Mahishasura, which is very well known, and we have the Mahishasura Mardini Stotram also, which celebrates that. Now this itihasam, this killing of Mahishasura, takes place very close to Tiruvannamalai on another hill, very close to adjoining it. And there is an added story that this body of Mahishasura becomes Ambal's temple itself. And it is said that there is a small portion of this temple, of this Durgambal temple, where if one goes down the steps, there is water on the side, and below the water is a Shivalingam which Mahishasura worshipped. So it doesn't end over here. So how does this Shivalingam come on Mahishasura? It turns out in his previous birth, he was a Shiva Bhakta. And as Ambal finally realizes that she has killed Mahishasura and she inspects his head, she sees that there is a Shivalinga stuck in his throat. And then she realizes, this is such a big apacharam I have done. I have killed a Shiva Bhakta. And then again, Gautama Maharishi has to come and tell her that, Amma, there is no sin to this. You are Shiva herself. There is no distinction between the two of you. So there is no sin that you have incurred by virtue of this action. So Ambal continues to remain there as Durgambal in this very specific temple near Pavadakundram in Tiruvannamalai. And the entire body of Mahishasura becomes the temple where she is worshipped. And it is said that in a small pond right inside of that temple itself, at the base of that pond in a hidden antechamber is where Mahishasura's Shivalinga is kept hidden as a symbol of his devotion. So there is no Shiva dosham. And then Gautama Maharishi conveys that there is no Shiva dosham, there is no aparadham which has taken place, because this has been to save the world and you are Shiva's Shakti herself. So there is nothing which happens. So this story continues. This is a very long story which establishes how Ambal comes here. So Gautama has concluded his assurance, but then something happens. Ambal suddenly hears two children crying. Amma, Amma, karke. Then she is a mother herself, Jagat Janani that she is. She goes to the source of this crying of these cries, and then she realizes the cries are coming from her sons, Ganapati and Subramanya. And then she realizes that yes, it has been a very long time since she has seen them. So she asks her handmaidens what happened. And then they say they are hungry. They have not had their mother's milk in a very long time. So this is where Shiva finally shows up and says, this is yet another Leela. And Ambal gets the very Pavitramana, a very holy name, Apitta Kuchambika. That is she whose breasts are yet to give milk. And that is how she gets the name, and that is how she gets her sthanam as well in Tiruvannamalai. So as this Leela finally concludes, Ambal has realized that she has been away from Kailasham for a very long time. Our story started in Kailasham. Ambal came to Kanchipuram and she became Kamakshi Ambal. Mahishasura Vadam has taken place. Crores and crores of years have gone. And then she comes and she finally realizes this has happened in Tiruvannamalai. Her children have not had milk. So Ambal realizes, now let me show the world how Shiva Puja is supposed to be done. And then she stays near Tiruvannamalai, spends all her time praying there. And finally, Kartika Masam, Kritika Nakshatram, which as Tamilians know as Kartikai Deepam, Shiva shows up again as that unending pillar of fire. The same darshan that he gave to Brahma and Vishnu, he has given that darshan to Ambal again. And then Ambal has pleased him greatly, and then he asks Ambal, what do you want? So Shiva has this habit, Ashutoshi that he is. Whoever is his devotee and he's very pleased with them, he will immediately say, here, you take this Ganapatyam. Here, you become one leader of these Ganas. You become a leader of these Ganas. So Ambal realizes this Ganapatyam and all is not going to work for her. So she says, I want to never be separated from you. I literally want to become Shiva Bhinna. And Shiva realizes this and finally says, okay, my entire left side is for you. So we know Ardhanarishwara, and this is the origin of the story of Ardhanarishwara and how it finally comes into existence. Near Pavadakundram, where there is an Ardhanarishwara temple, at that time, crores and crores of years ago, Ambal is said to have walked into Tiruvannamalai and vanished, and she becomes one with Shiva. So all of this itihasam, all of these Puranams, all of this travel from Kailasham to Kanchipuram to Tiruvannamalai is with a small moral of the story. You can say that Shiva and Shakti are inseparable. Shiva Bhinna Mahaduru Bhagan, as they say in Tamil, is what Bhagavan is, and that is what is established here throughout this entire Leela of Bhagavan and Ambal. So Bhagavan has come, Ambal is merged with Bhagavan. So why does Tiruvannamalai, in addition to all of this, still have such a great Mahima attached to it? So Bhagavan, as I said, is Avyaja Karuna Murti. There is nothing that he would ever stop giving. So Tiruvannamalai literally becomes that Chintamani Parvata which keeps giving and giving and giving to its devotees. It has been giving for so many Chaturyugas and continues to give it now. And the reason why this Mahima of Tiruvannamalai is so great is because Sakshat Swarupam of Parameshwara, Sakshat Shivalingam on this earth is Tiruvannamalai. Bhagavan himself says this: the first step that anybody takes towards me, I will wipe away all of the sins committed by their mind. The second step anybody takes towards me, I will wipe away all of their sins which are committed by their speech. And the third step that they take towards me, I will wipe away all of their sins committed by their body. And it's not over yet, because in Tiruvannamalai, there are so many devas, devatas, other swarupams of Parabrahmam who have come here and who have established tirthams, who have established Shivalingas and temples all around the place. So Mahavishnu has established a Brahma Pushkaram and a similar tirtham in and around Tiruvannamalai across the length and breadth of this town. Ashramas have been established by Gautama Maharishi and by Mahavishnu. Various other sacred places have been established in and around this vicinity. Within the Skanda Puranam, Bhagavan himself says that my hair hangs over here and this is my lap. So Kailasham is said to be where he resides, which is true. This is said to be where he calls his devotees: if you want to see me, don't go so far, come here and have my darshan. And within the Skanda Puranam is an explanation that more than Kailasham, more than Kedar, more than Pushkara, more than every other kshetra, Bhagavan will always be here. And not just that, Bhagavan's Sakshat Swarupam is this, and he takes this form for all living beings. And the first is that Tiruvannamalai is not just Lingarupam but Sakshat Parameshwara. Various Devi Devatas of Sanatana Dharma, as I have said, they've been here. And the third great Mahima of this, which I must share, is that Bhagavan takes the Rupam of a Guru in Tiruvannamalai. And the entire Kamika Agamam, out of the 28 Agamas which are established in Shaiva Siddhantam and other texts, the Kamika Agamam, Bhagavan sits here, he has Ambal next to him, and he narrates the entire Kamika Agamam, which explains how should his temples be built, how should he be placed, how should Ambal be placed, and how should every other Rupam, Swarupam of Bhagavan be placed in and around all of his entire temples. And the Kamika Agamam happens to be the most followed Agamam today in Tamil Nadu. So we have now seen the hill at length and understood the Mahima of Tiruvannamalai. So obviously, as there is a hill, there is a temple right before this hill. This temple was first constructed by Vishwakarma, the celestial architect. And Parameshwara had given Vishwakarma his permission to go and construct this. And the Puja Vidhi, that is the Kamika Agamam, was first narrated to Gautama Maharishi. And Gautama Maharishi imbibed all of this after experiencing this entire Arunachala Mahatmyam in the Skanda Puranam. And it is Gautama Maharishi's descendants even today who reside in and around Tiruvannamalai, continuing to do Seva and Puja to Arunachaleshwara over here. So this has been built eons ago. The temple has obviously been fortified in due course of time by the Pallavas, the Cholas, the Pandyas, Vijayanagara Samraja, Marathas and Nayakas. So much so that there is even a written edict that when the Mughals had demolished this temple, it was Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj who rushed with his armies to free it of Mughal control and re-establish this temple as per the Agama Shastras and the Agamas which are here. So this entire construction of this temple, you can see that there is one square over here, there is a larger one here, and then there is a larger rectangle over here. This entire construction is as per the Vastu Shastra, Shilpi Shastra, and other relevant Agamas which apply to this, including the Kamika Agama. In this innermost enclosure is where Bhagavan resides, Arunachalanatham, Arunachaleshwara, in the Linga Swarupam. The Garbhagraham is representative of the Agni Tattvam, because immediately when someone gets closer and closer to this, the heat becomes more and more and more. So there is a standing instruction that beyond a certain point when you enter into the Garbhagraham, it will always be more than 45 to 50 degrees at any time of the given year. So a little away from Bhagavan's Sannadhi is Ambal's Sannadhi, Apita Kuchambika. She has a separate enclosure for herself, a separate Vahana and a Dvajastambha. As per the Kamika Agamam, on these corners of the temple is where there are separate shrines for Subramanya over here, Vinayaka over here. Over here behind this is Lingodbhava, and even behind Lingodbhava there is Venugopala Krishna over there. And I'll explain in some time how and why Venugopala Krishna also has a sthanam for himself. There are two major tirthams in the temple. One is the Brahma Tirtham, which Brahma himself is supposed to have created, and then there is a Shivaganga Tirtham, which is said to be Swayambhu. The Sthalavriksha, somewhere on this side, is the Magadamaram, or it is the Indian pomegranate tree. Bhagavan's name here is Arunachaleshwara, and Ambal's name is Apita Kuchambika. So we have seen the Mahima of the hill, we have seen the Mahima of the temple. And now there is also a very interesting aspect related to Tiruvannamalai, which many of you would have heard of in the past. The Pradakshina, or the Girivalam. I think all of us would have heard of this mantram, Yani kani cha papani janmantara kratani cha tani tani vinashyanti pradakshine pade pade. And as any purohitar or any acharya would say it in a temple, the expectation is all of us would go 3 times around ourselves. The same Pradakshina mantram applies over here, and there has been a running tradition that Pradakshina is done to the Arunachaleshwara hill, and in addition to that, the temple as well. This anugraham of being able to do Pradakshina was not available to us for crores and crores of yugas. Because Tejasa Lingam, Tejasa Agni, it used to be unbearable. So for crores and crores of years, Rishis and Munis would continue doing Pradakshina so that the hill and the mountain cools down and it becomes more approachable for Samanya Jana like us. And as a result of their continuous upakarmas over crores and crores of years, the hill finally is now in a state where ordinary people like us can go and perform Pradakshina of this temple. And this is where Bhagavan himself says, the first step taken towards me, I will wipe away all sins of the mind. The second step taken towards me, I will wipe away all of the sins committed by speech. The third step anybody takes towards me, I will wipe away all of the sins committed by the body. And each of the 33 devas, I think there is this running argument sometimes. It is Koti Deva or Kodi Deva, whichever it may be. It is believed in the Skanda Puranam that the 33 Koti Devas, the 12 Adityas, 11 Rudras, 8 Marutas, and then the 2 Ashwinis, they become Kodi Devas or 33 crores as the result of worshipping Arunachaleshwara. And every single month, there is some Bhagavan and some Sadharana Manushya Rupam who comes here who performs Pradakshina on certain days of the year. The grahas, the Navagrahas which we know, Aditya, Soma, Mangala, Buddha, Guru, Shukra, Shani, Rahu and Ketu. These grahas become grahapatis. That is, they get additional responsibilities and a more elevated sthanam, courtesy having come and pray to Tiruvannamalai and Arunachaleshwara over here. And every month, one of the gods in our pantheon decides that this is the month that I will come and perform Pradakshina. In Chitramasam, in the Chitramasam Paurnami, which is going to be exactly, I think, 2 days from today, Mahavishnu will be performing a Pradakshina of Arunachaleshwara. In Vaishakha Masam, it is Surya. Vaishakha Masam, everybody knows, one of the most hottest months of the year for us in the Indian subcontinent. Surya Devata himself will come with Usha and Pratyusha Devi, who are his wives, and he will perform Pradakshina of Tiruvannamalai. In the Kartika Masam, Ambal as a Sumangali will walk around the hill during Kartika Deepam and during Paurnami over there. And so on and so forth. Every single Devata takes a turn to come. In the Pausha Masam, all of the medicines and Bhudevi perform Pradakshina over there. Falguna Masam, Bhudevi, Shri Devi, Sameta Narayana will again be performing Pradakshina over there. And so many others. And there are so many benefits that simply performing this Girivalam gives. There are benefits when you do it on certain tithis. There are benefits which you do it on certain varas and days of the week as well. So a simple example is, if somebody performs, say, the Girivalam on a Friday, then they directly attain Vishnu Loka. If somebody performs the Girivalam on a Sunday, then they are freed from this endless cycle of birth and rebirth and so on and so forth. And performing, say, the Girivalam on a Sunday is said to make an individual an emperor. The same on a Tuesday and so on and so forth. There is so much to speak about Tiruvannamalai, but yet there is so little that we as human beings can even compile and try to put together as we go ahead. So even the Pradakshina, the word Pradakshina itself has a great amount of import. As you can see, Praa over here dispels all sins. Da is said to bestow Manokamna Purti. Kshi is said to burn all karmas. And Na is said to give salvation. And this is something which is captured in the Skanda Puranam, in the Arunachala Mahatmyam. And this is available for all of us and out of Bhagavan's great Anugraham and out of his Karuna. So, temple done, hill done, Pradakshina done. So, few more things to share on the lines of Tiruvannamalai itself. Various famous compositions are there when it comes to Tiruvannamalai. Arunachala Natham Smarami, which Snigdha Desirajuji was very kind to record and share, was obviously a song which was composed by Muthuswami Dikshitar in this temple. There is also a very interesting composition known by the name Tiruvembavai. So out of the 4 poet saints who are associated with Tamil Nadu, Manikya Vasagar is one of them. So Manikya Vasagar imagines himself as a woman and he composes the Tiruvembavai. And he composes it with so much of love that he says, "You're a husband, you're a householder, you know how I feel about you." That is the depth of his devotion and that is the depth of his love towards Bhagavan. And he has composed 30 to 31 verses, each one coinciding with each day of the Margazhi Masam, that is the Dhanur Masam from mid-December to mid-January. Various festivals are celebrated here. The most prominent obviously being Kartikai Masam Kritika Nakshatram or Kartikai Deepam as we know. The Margazhi Chitra Vasantotsavam is also very prominent, as is the Ani Tirumanjanam, Margazhi Aradra and so many others. Tiruvannamalai is also associated with various other Shiva temples also along the length and breadth of our country. In my Dhyana Shloka I had mentioned, Darshanat Abrasadasi Jananat Kamalaalayam Kashyantu Maranan Mukti Smaranat Arunachale. That is to have darshan of Nataraja and Chidambaram, to be born in Kamalaalayam, that is Tiruvarur, to drop one's mortal body in Kashi, or to simply think of Arunachala. Any one of these 4 is said to be enough to guarantee mukti to the individual. And so it is one of the 4 mukti sthalams. It is also one of the Panchabhuta sthalas. The Bhukshetram being Kanchipuram, as I said, that Shivalingam is made by Ambal herself. Even today, the imprint of her hand and the imprint of her chest is there on the Shivalingam made of sand even today. So as a rule, there is no Abhishekam performed to this Bhulingam, but it is performed to the Avadayar or sometimes it is sprinkled upon it. The Jalakshetram, Tiruvane Koval in near Trichurapalli, the Akasha Kshetram, Chidambaram Nataraja, the Vayu Kshetram being Kalahasti, and the Agni Kshetram or the Tejas Kshetram being Tiruvannamalai. Tiruvannamalai is also part of a very interesting series called as the Pancha Ratna Sthalas. So the Pancha Ratna Sthalas has a very interesting backstory. As Vayu, the element of wind, Vayu and Adisesha have a competition to find out who is greater. So Adisesha decides to curl around the Mahameru mountain. And as Adisesha curls around the Mahameru mountain, he challenges Vayu to blow him off of it. So as Adisesha continues to curl the Mahameru mountain, it breaks into 5 parts. Each of these 5 parts fall in a different part of South India. So it so happens that the ruby, Ratnam, is said to have fallen at Ratnachala, that is Ayyarmalai today in Tamil Nadu near Trichy. The emerald is said to have fallen in Ingoi Malai, again very close to Ayyarmalai itself, close to Trichy. The sapphire is said to have fallen at Podigai, which is in the Tamil Nadu Kerala border. The red coral fell here in Tiruvannamalai. Some say that there is a diamond as well which has fallen in Kodumudi. There are various variants of this Puranam as well. Arunachala, Tiruvannamalai is also one of those rare places where all 4 bard saints are said to have sung the Tamil songs and verses for Parameshwara, and this is also one of the 275 Padal Petra Sthalams, and it is also one of a select few where Parameshwara is the Shivalingam and is the mountain behind the temple itself. So as I had started my narration, I had taken some time to mention a little bit about Agni, that it is the first element and the first Devata which is invoked in my Dhyana Shlokam and also in the start of the Rig Vedas. So there is a very interesting story with Agni here as well, which is associated with Tiruvannamalai. Agni is said to be the mouth of the gods. Agni Mukhave Devaha is the pramanam that goes for that. Due to a certain curse by a Maharishi, Agni is cursed to eat everything. So we know that is a property of Agni, that when it is controlled, it performs great things, but when it is uncontrolled, it consumes everything around us. So because of this curse, Agni goes to Tiruvannamalai. to find out how can he let go of these impurities which have come into him. So he prays at length in Tiruvannamalai, but he is told that your salvation is not here. Go further south. So Agni goes to a place called Tirupugalur. The older name of Tirupugalur, courtesy Agni having performed his puja over here and his meditation over here, is Agnipuri. And hence Bhagavan there gets the name Agnipurishvara. And then when Agni prays to Bhagavan and he finally gets darshan of Bhagavan, Bhagavan says that the curse cannot move, but it can be modified. So Bhagavan then says, for a certain duration in the year, burn the brightest, so that whatever impurities you have, you will finally let go of them. So this duration which Agni burns the brightest is what we know today as Agni Nakshatra. In the month bordering Chitra and Vaishakham is where for those 22 to 27 days, the impact of Agni through the sun is the greatest. And hence that is where Agni Nakshatram begins and then Agni Nakshatram ends. The Ketaki flower also has a backstory to this. Bhagavan, even though he may curse people whenever they do something bad, he will never forsake them. So because of this untruth which Brahma has said along with the Ketaki flower, that he has seen the summit and this Ketaki flower is my proof, the Ketaki flower or the Tarambu is not used for Shiva worship in most if not many places. But there is still an exception to this. So this Ketaki flower realizes that he has been an accessory to an untruth. Today when we know of the Indian Penal Law Code or the Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita, there is an aspect which says that if you are an accessory to a crime taking place, you are equally guilty. So the Ketaki flower also has to go through, it also has to atone for its sins. So the Ketaki flower goes all the way to a place beyond Madurai, in a place called Tiruppuvanam. So in Tiruppuvanam, he finds a Swayambhu Linga there, surrounded by a forest of flowers called Pushpavaneshwara. And the Ketaki flower prays to Shiva, and the Ketaki flower also gets a darshan of Shiva and is relieved of its sins. So there are a very handful of temples even today in Tamil Nadu where the Tarambu is used for Shiva worship. In majority places it is not. But there are a few exceptions. Mangalanatha Swami in Uttarakosamange is one of those places where the Tarambu is used to worship Shiva. Pushpavaneshwara is also one of those few exceptions. So Agni done, the Agni Tattvam, the third of the 5 elements, and then the Ketaki flower also finds its way out. So since we've had the good fortune of seeing the Karunyam of Bhagavan with divine beings such as Agni and a flower, his Karunyam is even greater towards us as human beings. So much so that whoever goes to Tiruvannamalai, those who choose to stay and those who take up, say, Sannyasa Diksha and other things, they are never the same again. And in the interest of time and also perhaps to share a little bit with everybody, I've taken the opportunity to curate 5 very specific individuals who are very closely associated with Tiruvannamalai. So the first of them is a saint by the name Gohan Namashay. So he's also a Siddha. So they say Gohan Namashay is Siddha. Gohan Namashay was born in Karnataka to a Veerashaiva family. So the parents obviously are unable to realize why the child is not interested in worldly things. So then the boy says that I want to go to Tiruvannamalai and remain there. And the parents realize that this is a calling of destiny. So they take their son to Tiruvannamalai, and then there he finds his guru, who is Shivananda Deshikar, and he takes Diksha from his guru. So in due time, as Gohan Namashay is there and that becomes his Diksha name, Gohan Namashay obviously becomes a talk of the town, because when a Siddha Purusha comes to a place, it takes very little time for that news to spread. So there are various leelas and stories which take place with Gohan Namashay. So Gohan Namashay is once called to a wedding where he gives Vibhuti Prasadam to everybody who comes. And as everybody leaves that home, the house catches fire and burns down. And then there is a devotee who makes a very snide remark and he says, this has also become Vibhuti. But this hurts Gohan Namashay very much, because he does not want anything bad or wrong to get associated with Bhagavan's name. So when Gohan Namashay hears this, he takes the same vibhuti which he's been giving to everybody, sprinkles it on the place where the house was burnt, and the house immediately materializes again. And all of this is captured. This is 13th, 14th century stories which have taken place. But because Gohan Namashay realizes that the Karunyam of Bhagavan will get lessened if he goes to these homes, he resolves he will never visit any home again. But he will be there in public halls, in other functions, etc. So he continues to do that. Finally, for a very long time, it is out of great respect and love for Bhagavan that he never enters the temple. He resides in the hill, he stays in the hill, he never enters the temple. Finally, he is coaxed, cajoled to go to the temple, and then when he sees Arunachaleshwara in front of him, he has his Jnanodayam and he says, this is my Guru. There is no distinction between my Guru and Bhagavan. To that extent, he has seen his Guru Shivananda Deshikar. And Shivananda Deshikar already dropped his body, but he says, this is my Guru. Now I have no need of anything else. So he neither visits any public place anymore, nor does he associate himself with devotees. He simply goes to a quiet corner in the Tiruvannamalai hill and he resides there. One of his compatriots or one of his Sanmarga Charitas also happens to be Virupaksha Siddha. Everybody, I think, because we would know a little bit about Ramana Maharishi, there used to be the Virupaksha Guha, where he is said to go and meditate frequently. This Virupaksha Guha names comes from the Siddhar by the name of Virupaksha Siddhar who is there. Virupaksha Siddhar is, say, Samadarshi of Gohan Namashay. At one point when Virupaksha Siddhar realizes his time has come, he immediately says, Shivaya Namo Om, and his entire body becomes bhasma. And that vibhuti is later collected into a small bowl and kept near the cave of Virupaksha Guha itself. And Gohan Namashay also has a few sishyas. So one of his sishyas is known by the name Om Namah Shivaya Siddhar. So Om Namah Shivaya Siddhar is like his guru. So eventually he reaches the level of his guru and he goes beyond it. But neither of them realize this. So suddenly when Gohan Namashay has walked around and he comes back, he sees his shishya, Om Namah Shivaya. He is tapping a cloth with his hand. And his guru asks him, what are you doing? He's like, oh no. There was a fire which took place in Tiruvarur. I am extinguishing that fire with my hands. And Gohan Namashay is taken aback and he says, okay. And then again he goes for another round and he comes back. And then he finds Om Namah Shivaya Siddhar laughing and he asks him, what are you seeing? He said, oh no, there is a drama which is taking place in Tanjai. I am seeing it in front of me and I am smiling and laughing because of that. Gohan Namah Shivaya Siddhar realizes that he has attained that pakvam, or he has reached that level which he was at. So he tells him, 2 elephants cannot be tied to the same pole. It is time for you to leave and establish yourself. So Om Namah Shivaya Siddhar takes the Agnya and blessing of his Guru and he goes to Chidambaram. And even though he goes to Chidambaram, he sings every day about Tiruvannamalai, in memory of his Guru and in memory of Arunachaleshwara as well. Om Namah Shivaya Siddhar attains Mukti in Chidambaram. And his Jiva Samadhi is still there, close to the Chidambaram Nataraja temple. And Gohan Namashay Siddhar has reached the age of 100. So he is happy that he will finally attain this Paramapadam of Bhagavan. And then as he is about to be lowered into his Samadhi, Parameshwara himself speaks and says, 100 more years. And Gohan Namashay Siddhar is so happy, he's like, oh, I'll spend 100 more years singing about you and praying to you. What else do I have to worry about? So he lives for another 100 years. After 200 years, Gohan Namashay Siddhar finally drops his body. And what he says at the end of it is something that I will share later on during the presentation. There are various other miracles as well which he performs. When a farmer goes with a dead goat to him and says, my goat was bitten by a cobra and is no more. And he says, it's okay, come back tomorrow. And he sees his goat having delivered 2 babies near the Virupaksha Guha itself. And then there is another incident where a bunch of boys decide to play a prank and they say, oh, you see, this boy has passed away. And he says, yes, I know. And they actually check the boy and they realize he has passed away. And then he says, I cannot bring the dead back to life. I do not have that samarthyam that my Bhagavan and my Guru have. So in this way, he is known to have been associated so much with Tiruvannamalai for the 180 years of his life that he has lived. But he is one of many such great siddhas who have lived here. An equally great one is someone by the name Aman. Aman is again not from Tiruvannamalai. She is from a place called Chinnasamudram near Erode. Aman at a very young age realizes all of her past births. And then she realizes one more thing, that it was she who in Kailasha had gone and covered the eyes of Bhagavan. She realizes she is Parashakti Amsham herself. So she lets go of all of these things related to the world and she walks straight away to Tiruvannamalai and she reaches there. And she has taken birth for just one purpose and one purpose alone, to reconstruct the northern Gopuram of Tiruvannamalai, Arunachaleshwara. And so there is a very interesting Leela which takes place with Aman as well. So she used to have a habit of going and taking bhiksha around all of the homes in Tiruvannamalai. So many of these householders would sometimes lie and say that there is nothing to offer. I do not have anything. And Aman will stand there and tell them, you have these many pieces of gold, you have these many pieces of silver, you have these many pieces of copper, and yet you are being stingy. And so as a result of this, she would take bhiksha from each and every home, and she collected bhiksha in order to build the gopuram over there for Bhagavan. So as this gopuram construction is taking place, she realizes she has run out of resources. She has nothing left to give, and the townsfolk also have nothing to give. So she asks Bhagavan, I have taken birth to do this for you and you are stopping me from doing this. And Bhagavan says, it's okay, give my vibhuti to them. And so these workers will collect ample amounts of vibhuti, take it home, and when they reach home, that vibhuti becomes gold. And eventually she realizes that her purpose concludes. She is able to build out the gopuram. There is still material left. Gopurams are built of great materials, of lots of stone. There is a lot of stone left. And then Aman asks Bhagavan, what do I do with this remaining stone? It's like, that will be used to build your samadhi. And that is exactly what happens. The remaining stones are taken near the Ishanya Lingam along the Girivalam path is where Aman's Jiva Samadhi is there, and the remainder of whatever was used to construct that Gopuram is used to construct her Jiva Samadhi here. So much so that the name of the Gopuram itself is Amman Gopuram. So there are 4 Gopurams. One is the Raja Gopuram, which faces east. The one that faces south is said to be the Tiruvannamalai Gopuram. The one that faces west is said to be the Periya Gopuram, which is now abbreviated and is called as Pe Gopuram. And then the northern Gopuram is called as the Amman Gopuram in memory of Amman. In addition to Amman, there is also one very great saint who is from Tiruvannamalai itself, who is Arunagiri Nada. So, Arunagiri Nada, in the earlier part of his life, was very addicted to sensual pleasures amongst many other things. An incident takes place at home and then he becomes absolutely disgusted with himself. And then he realizes, my life has no purpose now. So, Arunagiri Nada runs to the top of the Raja Gopuram, which is said to be the tallest Gopuram. And he jumps. But he doesn't die. Then he realizes he's about to fall, he hasn't fallen, and then his eyes are closed. He opens his eyes and then Subramanya is standing in front of him in absolute regalia on top of his peacock. And then he says, Arunagiri Nada, this is not your time to go yet. And then he says, I have no purpose. And he says, you sing my name. You sing about me. And then he's like, how can I sing? I don't know anything. And then Subramanya tells him to open his mouth and stick out his tongue. And as he does that, Muruga takes the tip of his spear and he writes the Pranava Mantram Om in Tamil on his tongue. I think this is something which many of us know because even in other incidents where there are very close bhaktas of Bhagavan or even Devi, Vidya is written onto their tongue. Some of the stories around Tenali Rama is such that he refused to allow Kali Kambal back inside the temple and he said, I will let you in only if you stick out your trident and write on my tongue so that I will never be bereft of taking your name. And she does that. This is also similarly takes place with a lot of saints. But as Subramanya concludes this, Arunagiri Nada receives siddhis of everything. And then Subramanya says, now you sing for me. And then he sings Muttai Tarupatti Tiranagai Attai Kirachatti, which is those pearly beautiful teeth that you have, and it is my great fortune that I get to see this and sing this for you today. So Arunagiri Nada is a little like the 4 Tamil saints who have preceded him by more than 500-600 years. Arunagiri Nada also goes around the entire length and breadth of Tamil Nadu. He goes to Tirupati, he goes to outside of Tamil Nadu as well, and he sings for every single Subramanya Kshetra and every temple that is there. Even today, his octets or the 8 verses that he composes are still sung in those temples even today. So Arunagiri Nada has obviously gone the length and breadth, and obviously the fame about Arunagiri Nada is spread far and wide. So he comes back to Tiruvannamalai and he is well acquainted with the Raja Sabha amongst many other things. There is an Upasaka there who is very jealous of this fame that Arunagiri Nada has received. So the Upasaka challenges him and tells him, I will make my Upasana Devata manifest in front of this hall. You make yours manifest as well. So this Upasaka tries, does not succeed. Arunagiri Nada composes 16 verses, which is called as the Devendra Sangha Vagupu. 12 of those verses are not even for Subramanya, they are for Ambal. In the remaining 4 verses as he sings, Subramanya reveals himself to everybody inside of Arunachaleshwara temple. There is one Sannadhi for him at the corner that I had shared earlier, but Subramanya again, so this is Subramanya's sthanam in the temple itself. But Subramanya again reveals himself in front of the temple outside of this praganam. And he is known by the name Kambatti Ilayanar. That is, he who breaks open the pillar and reveals himself. The only other Bhagavan whom we know of who breaks a stambam to reveal himself is Narasimha. But the commonality between these two is that both of them are related to Mangala Devata or Mars. Mars just knows one thing. If somebody asks something, they have to give it right away. No questions, no qualms. So as he reveals himself in front of in the Kambatte Ilayanaar temple, Arunagiri Nada is able to withstand that tejas. But everybody else in that sabha is not able to see anymore. They've gone blind. So in order to cure their blindness, Arunagiri Nada tells the Raja there that don't worry, I will go and bring back the Parijata Pushpam and the tree and the branch and the creeper itself so that you will all be cured eventually. So he does what Adi Shankara did a long time back. He keeps his body in one place and Arunagiri Nada takes the form of a parrot and he goes into Swargaloka to bring back this. But something takes place as he does this. That same Upasaka has his body cremated. Some say cremated, some say interred without his notice. So when the Raja realizes that Arunagiri has come back and he has given this and he gets his vision back, Arunagiri remains a parrot forever. He doesn't die. Arunagiri Nada's body may have been cremated or perhaps say kept inside one of the corners of the temple. Some say that it is in one of the corners of the temple inside Arunachaleshwara itself and the body still has a great amount of siddhis. So Arunagiri Nada says it's okay. I have no ill will towards anybody. So Arunagiri Nada decides to reside in the Gopuram closest to Arunachaleshwara. And that Gopuram is known by the name Kili Gopuram. Kili is another name for parrot. So Arunagiri Nada is also another saint who is greatly associated with this place. Another one whom many of us know is Seadri Swamigal. So Seadri Swamigal's life story is also a very interesting one. So he is born and raised in Kanchipuram. A small incident takes place where as a little boy, he finds an idol of Krishna. And he holds it and he tells his mother that this is what I want. So his mother says, no, nothing doing. So he keeps that idol of Krishna back and then they all go home. That shopkeeper goes to Seadri Swamigal's house and says, my entire stock and consignment of vigrahas for months and months together have all been sold. I would sell 1,000 in a month. I have sold 100,000 in a week. And then they realize that this boy is a gifted boy and they call him Tangakkai. Tangam in Tamil means gold, Kai means hand. So eventually, at a very early age, Seadri Swamigal unfortunately loses his father and his mother on her deathbed, she tells him that you go to Tiruvannamalai and you stay there. So as he comes to Tiruvannamalai, he is obviously besotted by he is greatly enamored by the Arunachaleshwara and he begins to walk around it. So he is stopped and called by somebody by the name Balaji Swamigal. And Balaji Swamigal realizes that this is somebody who is very much a divine person. So Balaji Swamigal gives him Sannyasa Diksha. And so he gets the name Seadri Swamigal. And Balaji Swamigal initiates him into the Chatur Mahavakyas or the Pancha Mahavakyas which are associated with our faith. So we may have heard of it in some form or the other. Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, Prajnanam Brahma, Ayamatma Brahma, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. These Panchamahavākyas are what Seadri Swamigal are initiated into, and he remains in Tiruvannamalai till the end of his days. So much so that he is later known by the name Mauna Swamigal. And it is Seadri Swamigal, when he is visiting Tiruvannamalai, he goes to the Patalalingam and he sees Ramana Maharishi over there, meditating, and his body is in a state where he has been bitten by ants. Ramana Maharishi's body has been bitten by scorpions and various other poisonous insects and creatures. So it is Seadri Swamigal who saves Ramana Maharishi and he brings him out of the Patalalinga Kshetram within the Tiruvannamalai temple itself, and he cares for him and tends to him later. Eventually, Seadri Swamigal also drops his body. He drops his body in Tiruvannamalai itself, and at the same time there is another Sahaja Samadhi of his. This is a tradition with many holy men, that they'll have 3 to 5 major samadhis in and around the length and breadth of Sanatana Dharma. So a very popular example is Sadashiva Brahmendra, the Avadhuta Chintamani as they call him. Sadashiva Brahmendra has 3 samadhis. One is in Nerur, one is in Manamadurai, and the third is in Karachi. In the same way, Adi Shankara is also believed to have dropped his body, left his mortal body in Kanchipuram, Kedar, and even Trichur, Vadakonnatha. Some say they have even seen him go beyond Badri. So, holy men, we don't really know how and why they do the things we do, or they do rather, but we can only put our hands up and pray to them as much as we can. Ramana Maharishi, We all would have heard a lot and known a lot about him. Ramana Maharishi was born in a place called Tiruchuri. Tiruchuri is one of the 275 Padal Petrasthalas, which is where Bhagavan with his Trishulam is said to have created craters and gaps into the Bhulokam over there, so that the Pralayam gets dissolved over there and does not affect anyone else further. Suriyal in Tamil means whirlpool. So Tiruchuri then becomes the name where Bhagavan performs this Leela. And it is there, some say Margari Arudra, some say Margasirsha is where Ramana Maharishi is born in Tiruchuri. So as he loses his father at a very early age, Ramana Maharishi is known by the name Venkatraman, that is his Purvashrama name. So Venkatraman moves from Tiruchuri to Madurai. And during this time of his life, he reads the Periya Puranam. The Periya Puranam, for those who don't know, is an anthology which compiles the lives of the 63 very holy saints who have been devoted towards Shiva. And as he reads this, he realizes that it is possible. Shiva is not a lie. Shiva is real. And then when he would go and spend time in the Madurai Meenakshi temple, he used to walk around the pragaram which has the 63 saints as idols. And he used to think, they have achieved such great sayujam with Bhagavan. Will I also get this someday? Is something that he used to think. And eventually he realizes as he reads the Periya Puranam that there is a place called Tiruvannamalai. It is not fiction. And then he resolves that at that young age of 15, 16 or 17 years old, that he will go there. So he tells his family that he is going to go to school for some extra classes. But he takes a train ticket and he goes all the way from Madurai to Tiruvannamalai. It takes him 3 days to get there. And as he goes there, he is so overcome by emotion when he sees Arunachaleshwara, he immediately rushes to the Shivalingam and he starts crying. It's almost as though he has found exactly what he was looking for. And then he realizes that he will attain Shiva with nothing or anyone's help. So he would quietly go away to the Patalalinga, which is there within the temple itself, and he would meditate there, which is where Seadri Swami finds him, and then he is tended to and cared for by everybody else. Ramana Maharishi, in the course of his life, would propagate something known as self-inquiry. That is to ask, who am I? This is in a layman's term of trying to break down what the core Upanishads and the core Mahavakyas and what the Vedas itself say. The closest that anybody can get to the art of self-inquiry or the science of self-inquiry is the Eka Shloki by Adi Shankara Bhagavad Pada. So Adi Shankara Bhagavad Pada writes just one shlokam, that's why the name Eka Shloki. He composes it in the form of a dialogue between a guru and a sishya. So the guru asks the sishya, what is it that makes you see during the day and what makes you see during the night? And the sishya says, it is the light of Surya that makes me see during the day and it is the light of the lamp that makes me see during the night. So the guru asks him again, what is it that makes you see that light? So the sishya says, the eye, chakshu, makes me see that light. And then he asks, what is that makes the eye see? So the eye is there, the eye is an organ, the eye has a function. So what is it that gives the eye that function? And then the Shishya says, the intellect makes me see. And then the Guru asks the last question which unfolds this lotus. What is it that makes the intellect think? And then the Shishya says, it is the Atma. And the Guru completes it by saying, that Atma is you. And it is that which Ramana Maharishi simplifies and makes all of us know in the form of self-inquiry. And Ramana Maharishi, having reached Tiruvannamalai, never goes anywhere else. He travelled within the city itself. He would sometimes go to the temple and come back. He will sometimes go to Pavarakundru, which is where Ambal walks into Bhagavan and becomes one. Pavarakundru also becomes very famous because Pavarakundru is where Ramana Maharishi gives the only Upadesham that he ever gives to his mother. And he sums it up by saying, and there is also a Tamil text which speaks about this when it says, Sollaru summa iru. That is, speak half, stay quiet. And eventually, in 1950, Bhagavan lets go of his mortal coils. Ramana Maharishi letting go of his mortal coils is also very well known to people across the length and breadth of Bharatavarsha. At that time, the pontiff of Sringeri Matham, when he is travelling in a palanquin, he suddenly asks the palanquin to stop. And then the then Sringeri Peethadipati looks up into the skies and he sees a meteor rushing, and then he realizes that a great soul has finally returned to the lotus feet of Shiva. And he realizes that is Ramana Maharishi. And at the same time, Chandrasekharendra Saraswati, the then Mahapariva and the then pontiff of Kanchipuram, also sees the same thing in Kanchipuram, and then he says, you have finally attained Siddhi. And then he calls his Sishyas and says, see, that is Ramana Maharishi returning back to where he came from. Carl Jung uses this, and he uses the term synchronity. That is an event which has a linkage with others but is not exactly explained. Perhaps that is the thing with Bhagavan as well, that there is really no explanation around why Bhagavan does the things he does and why he says the things he says and why he does what he does for his devotees. And perhaps it is that Avyaja Karunam that Bhagavan has, so much so that in the Skanda Puranam, when Brahma starts describing about Arunachala to Sanaka Maharishi, he says, Avyaja Karunamurti Arunadri. Name of Arunadri itself is another name for Arunachala. And he uses the name Avyaja Karunamurti Arunadri when Brahma himself explains this to Sanaka Maharishi. So if there were three things that I would like to leave you all with, then it is perhaps this. Bhagavan as a guru. Guru is eventually the one, according to our faith, who is said to be the boatman who takes us across this ocean called as samsara. Seadri Swami would very beautifully say this about Tiruvannamalai and Arunachala when he'll say, and I had mentioned that Venugopala Krishna is here in this temple. So Seadri Swami would say, this is Tiruvannamalai. Krishna will play the flute, Swami and Ambal will come and dance here. And they welcome all devotees to come and take mukti for themselves. And he is also a beacon of knowledge. See, Guru is the one who finally gives you that Atma Jnanam. In fact, so much so that even in my Dhyana Shlokam, I had only realized later that Atma Jnanadi Danena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. That is, he who gives the Agni, that is Atma Jnanam, is the Guru, and it is to that Guru I offer my Namaskarams. This is what Adi Shankara himself says. And there is even a Shlokam which says, and many of us would have heard this as well, Arogyam Bhaskara Dichet. That is, Bhaskara, the sun gives us Arogyam, that is health. Shriyam Ichet Hutasanaha. That is, Hutasana, Agni, gives us Shriyam. There is a difference. Shriyam can be Hitam or Priyam. Priyam is the nicer things that we get, but Hitam is that which is good for us. Priyam is, have you eaten, have you rested? Hitam is, have you performed your Anushtanas, have you dropped your mind at Bhagavan, have you taken refuge in him? Jnanam Maheshwara Dichet. If you need Jnanam, Maheshwaram, Parameshwaram is the one who can give it. And that Jnanam itself is said to be Mukti. That is why an entire Sampradayam in Advaita, they are known by the name Jivan Muktas. Our Puja Shankaracharyas across all of the mathas are known by the name Jivan Muktas. And when they finally drop their body, there is a phrase which is used for them, Jivan Mukta has become Videha Mukta. That is, they have finally dropped the body which is theirs. Bhagavan himself is also an absolute and intense outpouring of love to us. The Tirumandiram, which is a book which is very closely related with the great saint Tirumular, he mentions, Anbe Sivamai Amarnde Irundare. That is, Shiva is love, love is Shiva. There is no distinction between the two. And the last, Bhagavan being the Guru, Bhagavan being that infinite repository of love, Bhagavan being the one who can give release from rebirth. Arunagiri Nada has composed so many verses where he praises Subramanya. In one of them he says, Yed Kadal Manalai. That is, if you compile the grains of sand which border the 7 seas or the 7 oceans across the world, that many and many more are my janmas. That many avatarams I have to take. And who is the one that can deliver me from all of this constant birth and rebirth? And that is where in the same Tamil scriptures for Shiva, there is a name for him, Pirappili. He does not have birth. Who else can give a stop to birth and rebirth but the one who is never born? Ajato Rudraha is a pramanam which is said where Bhagavan does not have origin or summit. So who else can cut that rebirth again and again and again with his axe? Parameshwara can do that. So much so that even Haradatta Shivacharya, a very famous saint who is associated with Tiruvannamalai and also various other places in Tamil Nadu, said, Janma Dhamsadya Bhava Tapicha Pashupatihi Sarvadeva Prakrishtaha. That is, Janma Dhamsam. Who can destroy this Janmam, Punarjanmam again and again? Bhagavan can. And if I were to conclude this, then I will perhaps pick a very few beautiful verses which Gohan Namashay had shared in Tamil. For the benefit of everybody, I will share this in English. And he is overcome with emotion because he knows that his 200 years are finally concluded. So he says, we have crossed this ocean of demeaning rebirths. He does not spare his language. He just says demeaning rebirths. This is the name of that ocean. We have crossed this ocean of demeaning rebirths. We will have no truck with the one who sits on a lotus or with the one who rides the buffalo. So when he says this, he says, I will have no association with the one who sits on a lotus, Brahma. I will have no association who sits on a buffalo, Yamadharma Raja. When he says, I will have no association with them anymore, nor will I have to endure this body which goes through 360 diseases. He is so graphic when he says this. He says, no more shall I have to endure this body, that is the dwelling place of 360 maladies in which dies. Arunesha, take your axe, abolish this concept of birth and rebirth for me. And it is with this emotive note that I'd now like to bring my presentation to an end. It has been the Karunyam of Bhagavan that he has brought us all together, and we have the good fortune and opportunity to hear about Tiruvannamalai, to hear about the temple, to hear about the Arunachaleshwara hill itself, to hear about the association of so many holy places, so much so that everybody says that if Kashi has so many holy people, Tiruvannamalai has that many sadhus, sannyasis, and so many other babas who are there and who live inside of the hill itself, and they come out to give darshan whenever they feel like. So it is with that note I'd like to bring my presentation to an end. It has been the Karunyam of Bhagavan. And with this note, let us all jointly submit this at the lotus feet of Apita Kuchambika Sameta Arunachaleshwara. And I hope and pray that Bhagavan protects all of us, our nation, our soldiers who are at our frontiers. And it is our sincere hope and prayer that Bhagavan gives Arogyam, Shriyam, Jnanam, and eventually Moksham. Kanchana Pratima Bhasam Suryakoti Samaprabham Baddha Vyagra Puridhyanam Smarunat Arunachalam Shri Hare Namaha Gopika Jivana Smaranam Govinda Govinda Haranama Parvati Pate Har Mahadeva. There is perhaps one last mention that I'd like to make as I conclude. In the past two presentations that I've had the good fortune of doing here in the Kamalaalayam Sabha, my wife's paternal cousin Kamlesh Rao would be one of the audience members. We lost him some time back. This presentation is in his memory. Very certain that he has reached the lotus feet of Arunachala. Who knows, they may be here with us as well. This is in his memory, and again, thank you all once again for making it. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you. It is this painting that you all see here today. This is a small token of my family's appreciation to Ambika Auntie and Anant Uncle. I'm going to request my parents and my parents-in-law to please come on the stage and give this to them. Just as there is a chief resident in Kamalaalayam in Tiruvarur, there is a chief resident in Kamalaalayam here as well. And may he always remain here.